Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have another couple of very interesting stories. One, detailing that maybe water once existed on Mars in a liquid form, and another about a story involving the Black Vault and their inquiry to the Pentagon about UFOs, and they were denied. We're going to read both articles because they're both entertaining as hell. But let's get into the first one. Mars may have had lost water due to axial tilt changes. Let's get into it now. Why did Mars, once covered with rivers and lakes, turn into a dry and cold desert? A new study conducted by scientists from the Institute of Astrophysics of Andalusia in Spain provides answers to these questions. The results are published in the journal Nature Astronomy. Mars is now covered mostly in dry deserts, with most of its remaining water frozen in the ground and at the poles, but geological evidence from early space missions suggests that billions of years ago, the planet held significant amounts of liquid water, enough to cover the surface to a depth of about 100 meters. One explanation for the loss of water involves the breakdown of atmospheric water vapor by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Indeed, folks, that could very well be true. I've heard about this theory before, folks, that the planet lost its atmosphere and then it lost its water on the surface. But let's continue. The hydrogen produced in this process could leave the atmosphere, taking water molecules with it. Modern measurements show that huge amounts of hydrogen are lost from the atmosphere of Mars every day. However, calculations show that this mechanism cannot fully explain the scale of water loss over billions of years. The authors of a new study from the Institute of Astrophysics of Andalusia in Spain hypothesized that fluctuations in the tilt of Mars's rotation axis played a significant role. Unlike Earth, whose tilt is maintained by the Moon, Mars experiences sharp changes in tilt angle from 0 to 66 degrees, with an average of about 35 degrees. According to the model, as the tilt of the axis increases, Mars's North Pole receives more sunlight, causing ice to melt and increasing the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. In turn, this increases the release of hydrogen into space. Computer modeling showed that at a tilt of 35 degrees, the rate of hydrogen leakage increases by about 1 billion atoms per year compared to current values. Additionally, dust storms that are common on Mars increase hydrogen loss by 50% depending on their intensity. The combined effect of these factors, the researchers estimate, could have resulted in a loss of water equivalent to a layer of about 80 meters thick across the entire surface of the planet. This value was close to the minimum estimates of the volume of water that once existed on Mars. The authors note that the composition of Martian dust and other parameters could have differed from the current ones, which also influenced the processes of water loss. That's all very interesting, isn't it, folks, to think that water once existed on Mars. Either way, let's move on to the next article. Do not respond. Pentagon staff instructed to ignore the Black Vault's UAP inquiry. Let's hear about how this internet site was basically, barred from having their UAP request filled, folks. So let's get into it now. The Department of Defense, DoD, has released 151 pages of internal records related to the Flare 1 Gamble and GoFast UAP videos. The disclosure obtained by the Black Vault through FOIA Case 19F-1420 adds new detail to the growing archive of material that documents how the U.S. government internally handled the official release of the 3 now famous videos, while the U.S. Navy confirmed last week it withheld 498 pages in full regarding the same release effort. The 151 pages from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, OSD, are overlapping in subject matter and offer a closer look at the overall internal processes and discussion. Both sets of documents stem from multiple FOIA requests filed in 2019 by the Black Vault, and both were finalized the same week in July 2025, suggesting coordinated processing between the Navy and OSD on the 2 cases. Among the more revealing records is an August 19, 2019 internal email from a DoD staffer written in response to a question submitted by the Black Vault the previous day. The inquiry asked whether the Navy had ever completed a required step in the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review DOPSR processes, specifically whether it had formally responded to clear the videos for public release after a 2017 review. The internal email reads, "Our instructions are not to respond and forward requests to public affairs." The answer to his question is no, Navy did not respond. Had they responded, it would have been part of the case file responsive records. This is why Mr. Elizondo was told in the email that the information owner needed to verify it. It was okay to release once the metadata was removed. As we've said before, that condition was never met. Now, most of the email appears to be redacted, but What they basically told us was, well, go fly a kite, folks. No, we're not going to basically tell you anything. But continuing with the actual article here, folks, it says, our instructions are not to respond and forward requests to Public Affairs. Answer to his question is no, Navy did not respond. Had they responded, it would have been part of the case file responsive records. Basically, it reiterates what the actual email says, but as you can see, yeah, it's a no-burger here, folks. Either way, at the time of the exchange, the DoD already had the information necessary to provide a direct answer. However, the FOIA office, acting under internal guidance, chose not to inform the Black Vault and instead redirected it to Public Affairs. The question itself was narrowly focused and factual. Whether or not a final approval had ever been submitted to DOPSR, it was not classified, nor was it subject to any legal exemption, yet the FOIA officer, following instructions, withheld the answer and ignored the question. Now, before we continue, DOPSR means DOPSR. That's another of these government groups, folks, with those, alphabet names. I just wanted to clear that up before we continue. Under the Freedom of Information Act 5 U.S.C. 552, federal agencies are required to provide access to records, but not to answer questions or explain policy. Courts have consistently upheld this limitation. The Department of Justice FOIA guidance reiterates this standard. Agencies must search for and produce responsive agency records, but they are not obligated to create new records or answer questions posed as FOIA requests. So while frustrating and arguably at odds with the spirit of transparency, the DoD's refusal to respond directly to a factual question remains legally permissible. In response to the silence, the Black Vault resubmitted the question to the U.S. Navy along with 4 others to continue digging. It would take until September 9th, 2019, 3 weeks after the internal email confirmed the answer was known, before a reply was finally received. It sounds once again like the government's just basically dodging answering any FOIA requests, folks, and doing all it can not to basically, tell anything about what they actually know. Either way, continuing, the 151 pages released by OSD also include, again, how the videos were initially submitted for review in 2017, but now include additional context by revealing internal communications never before released to the public until now. Originally, the review of the 3 UAP videos began at the request of Luis Elizondo for internal DoD use. A DOPSR email at the time stated that public release could proceed if the originating classification authority, OCA, verified the videos as unclassified once metadata was removed. However, no such verification was ever documented, and the Navy never gave that authorization. Then the article basically details more from the email, folks. Yeah, the conditions were for redacted to share with cleared contractors only and wait for Navy to approve for public release. So they're saying, folks, because there was no authorization, they couldn't release this information. Another 2019 Pentagon email affirmed the videos were never officially released to the general public by DoD and should still be withheld. Despite these positions, the videos were eventually posted to the Navy's FOIA reading room in April 2020, the same day another FOIA case filed by the Black Vault was answered. This further indicated the release was driven by FOIA pressure, not voluntary transparency. Together, these records showed that answers existed internally but were intentionally withheld from the public, even when disclosure would not have compromised any sensitive information. The release adds to the growing body of documentation showing that the handling of the UAP videos, not just by classification or policy, but also by strategic control of information flow. So indeed, folks, it looks like, once again, we're being blackballed and continued to basically have no access to any information that basically, to deal with actual alien and UFO logical information that the government is holding, folks. So once again, they're doing that to us. So no one can basically get to the truth. Sadly, folks, that's how it always seems to be. Either way, folks, do you think one day that the government will come clean, or do we have to force it out of them one way or the other? One day I think this information will come out. A lot of people think so as well, folks. But those people think it'll come from a whistleblower. Anyway, folks, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. You can go subscribe to me by using the link down below in the descriptions or in the chat. Now, hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications. And please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Till next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.